Hi everyone, it's Sybil Starr here with the Astrological Forecast for 2020. Well, today is January 6th, and there is a lot going on. We're sitting here on the brink of possible war, and climate change is just impacting the world between the fires and the floods and the snow, everything that is happening around the world. And yet there is some hope. Just want you to know that. There is, as Rick Tarnas says, we're going through the eye of the needle in 2020, and I will explain why and what that means. And what he is referring to, it is the eye of the needle as we're moving through a shift in consciousness of where our energy needs to be lined up to make that shift. Okay. And this is a year of a lot of work of getting lined up. I am calling this new year 2020 Vision a quantum leap year, because yes, it is a leap year, and we are moving more deeply into Aquarian consciousness from Capricorn into Aquarius by the end of the year. Okay, and I'll explain to you what that all means. So I'm just going to give you a few little things that I see about the year just up front. Then I'll tell you what's going on astrologically. This is a year where we are building a foundation for the new reality that is coming as the old one crumbles. Mother Earth is moving into higher levels of consciousness. This is the shift that Rick Tarnas is talking about. It was about a year ago, actually. I heard a Shinto priest give a prophecy, and the Shinto priest is the ancient, or Shinto religion is the ancient nature religion of Japan, just in case you did not know. And their ancient, and it's very old, their ancient prophecy was that in these times, Mother Earth would be moving into higher dimensions. And there's so many other teachings, New Age teachings, indigenous teachings, faith teachings, all kinds of teachings. Even more traditional teachings talk about the apocalypse, which is not quite the same meaning, but is still moving into different states of consciousness. And so the teaching is that Mother Earth is shifting into higher levels, higher dimensions. And the question is not, are we going with her? The question is, how difficult or smooth will this transition be? We're going there. It's just making choices that line up so that our energy is in alignment with Mother Earth as she is shifting into these higher levels of consciousness. We have the potential to make quantum leaps. And of course, now that we know more about quantum physics and quantum mechanics, it makes it easier to understand. It is a time when we can become our most powerful selves, steeped in our own personal authority. Each of us have a mountain to climb this year. We need to do it personally and collectively. And it is a time of great earth changes with new practical solutions. They are coming through. So first, I'm just going to list some of the things that are happening, because there's so much happening this year. It is jam-packed, and we are moving very quickly. And just so you know, astrology to me is underscores the fact that we all have free will choice. Astrology is not fated. It does show us our destiny. It does show us if we make choices, we can go this way or we can go that way. But we have free will choice, okay? And hopefully everything is tipping into the direction that is really in our highest good. So to begin with, the year starts with a stellium in Capricorn, which means there's a whole lot of planets in Capricorn. 7 to begin with. And there is a lunar eclipse coming up on January 10th, later this week, that is really going to activate all of that Capricorn energy. Okay. 2020, it adds up to 22. 22 is a master number. And just so you know, Many masters are born in the sign of Capricorn because it is, and I feel like we are in a time of master teachings of Capricorn. There's 6 eclipses this year. Normally there's only 4. And one of the reasons is because we have an extra full moon and it just kind of falls that way. We have 13 full moons. It is a leap year. Saturn moves into Aquarius this year for a few months in the middle of the year, and then December 17th then for another 2.5 years. Mars and Venus are both retrograde, which doesn't always happen that they are retrograde in the same year, but this year they are. Mars is a real catalyst and plays a really big role. Venus has some influence, but not as much as Mars this year. Just so you know, and I'll be talking about Venus when she does go retrograde, which is on May 11th. That it is not a time to begin or end a, well, let's put it this way, it's not a time to get married, it's not a time to get divorced. It is a time to reflect upon your relationships and what it is you want. And then Mercury, of course, is retrograde 3 times in water signs. All right. And the other thing that's really big, and I didn't mention it, is that, which is really the biggest, is that we have 2 major Pluto, Jupiter events, 2 major, we have 2 major Saturn events. We have, which is Saturn and Pluto, and Saturn and Jupiter. We have 2 major Pluto events, which is Pluto and Saturn, and Pluto and Jupiter, and 2 major Jupiter events, which is Jupiter and Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto. They're all 3 in Capricorn right now, and so that's one of the things that makes this energy so big. It's not just the inner planets, it's really some of the big guns. Pluto and Saturn are really the big guns. I mean, when it's time for, well, Uranus as well, when it's time for major change is when they come in together. Okay. And so, but first I'm going to just talk about Capricorn and what Capricorn means, because it's like I said, we are getting a master teaching in Capricorn. To begin with, Capricorn is the archetype of the elder. And so it is about maturity. It's kind of like I said in one of my other talks, that it's time to put on our big girl panties. You know, there are times when it is about really self-care, and I mean, and this is self-care, but we have work to do. Everybody has some kind of work to do, whether it's inner work or outer work. And Saturn is transiting in Capricorn, which is his own sign, so it makes it just so strong. Right. So it's like the grandmother and the grandfather energy. It's, it's like, when they have eyes in the back of their head, or, it's character building, you're 21, get out and get a job. But it's also about wisdom. It's about the wisdom of the elder. It's that wisdom that recognizes the importance of planting trees that, you will never live to enjoy or to sit under, because it is good for the children, that is good for the grandchildren, it is good for the environment, it is good for beauty, it is good for Mother Earth. I mean, all of the beautiful things that trees bring us. And a tree is longevity, and that's what Capricorn is. It is about planting seeds of longevity. Okay. Not cut and chasing when things get difficult. Just staying in there and working things out on some level. And sometimes it is walking away. If that's, whatever. Saturn always brings in things that are challenging for us to do, but that are for our own growth, where we stand in our own personal authority. Saturn and Capricorn both. It is about standing in our own personal authority. Saturn, just Saturn by himself, and I should just talk a little bit about him. So when Saturn enters the scene, I always know it's going to be a time of hard work, whatever it is. And there may be some things that I don't really want to do that I need to do. Just for example, wanting to have a much larger online presence, offering classes and different things. But the obstacle was technology. I just had this fear of technology. And I have just really stepped into it and am taking charge of, this is what I want to accomplish, and this is what I have to learn. If this is what I have to learn to make this happen, this is what I have to do. And so it's like, whether it's, your relationship or your professional life or your children, whatever it is that you've kind of not been doing because it's been hard, well, now's the time to do it. It's kind of like that. If not now, when? Like, you've been wanting to write that book. If not now, when? The energy is ripe. That's what I'm saying. The energy is ripe, and it's just sitting down and putting one foot in front of the other and doing what it is you need to do. Just like when you're climbing a mountain, and you have to stay focused, because if you don't focus, you'll fall off that mountain, or hurt your foot or get injured. So it is staying focused on the goal, like the mountain goat, which is the symbol of Capricorn. Saturn is also the Lord of Karma. So it's the teaching, we reap what we sow. So if we plant flowers, we'll get plant flowers, But if we plant hate, if we plant fear and discord, we'll get fear and discord. So it's what are we planting? What are we growing here? And so we reap what we sow in all ways, and it can be a wonderful harvest, or it can be a big teaching about how to come back into alignment with your own personal authority. And it's very practical solutions to our very real problems. Capricorn, I just wanted to say, using Saturn, just before I finish up, I'm kind of intermixing them because they do flow so well together. Saturn and Capricorn are just, they fit each other like a glove, okay? So they have a lot of similar energy. It was believed that Saturn was the last visible planet, and so in our solar system. And it was believed that one had to master the teachings of Saturn to master the teachings of Earth, because it does rule 3D reality. For every action, there is a consequence. And so when Saturn times come along, it's about setting good boundaries. It is where you say yes, where you say no. Yeah. So it is a time of great manifestation. What we must do to accomplish our goals, setting goals, climbing that mountain. One more thing I wanted to talk about with Capricorn is that Edgar Cayce related the sign Capricorn to the indigenous people of North and South America, of the Americas, but especially North America. And so it is that when you think of indigenous people, First Nations people of these lands, and their way of life that required honor and respect for elders, and the real I can say practical way of looking at the world, because you needed to survive, and how they had learned to work with that energy, and that is very Capricornian. Capricorn is also related to governmental, political, financial, and corporate institutions. I did also want to say one more thing about Saturn, and Saturn does rule what we call consensus reality, what we all agree is true, and what is okay and what is not okay. So Saturn in Capricorn is just a very strong energy. It's kind of like doubly strong. The shadow side of Saturn and Capricorn is control, judgment, loneliness, workaholism, and authoritarianism. So Saturn does bring up our limitations, and when limitation comes up, fear can come up, and there can be the reaction to try to control the situation when we are afraid. And so just know that that's also really strongly in the air right now, or in our field, one would say, that this fear is coming up. And so the thing to do with fear is breathe. You just keep breathing. You recognize that fear is coming up, and fear can feel like a contraction. It can feel like a limitation. And so just breathe through it. Okay. Pluto, who is Pluto? Pluto in Capricorn. So what I'm saying is there is going to be a Pluto-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn on January 12th. Okay. And that is a really big thing. And these two planets come together 3 times a century. And so I haven't really explained who Pluto is yet. So Pluto is the god of death, rebirth, and death, transformation, and rebirth. Okay. Pluto brings up the what lies below the surface, what has been hidden. And the truth is, we often know what is down there, but are afraid to face it. So anyway, up it comes in our faces. And collectively, it has to do with the institutions, our halls of power. Pluto has to do with power, just to be ultimately as clear as possible. Pluto is power, okay? And whether that power is derived from control and fear, or whether that power is derived from respect, okay? That's kind of what we're doing here. And anyway, so it brings up the underbelly of whatever it touches. And so it is bringing up the underbelly of our institutions. In Capricorn and Saturn are about the structures that we have created. And I should have said that earlier. That's why Saturn rules those and Capricorn rules those particular institutions, because it is the structures that we have created to support our civilization and our culture. And physically, Saturn actually controls the structure, controls the skeletal system, the bones, the teeth, all of that. But anyway, back to Pluto. So Pluto is bringing this up to the surface. Now, not that long ago, Pluto was in Sagittarius. And when Pluto was in Sagittarius, the pedophilia scandal within the church became known. And Sagittarius rules theology, religion, all of those things. And so Pluto came along and brought all of that to the surface. And I just want to interject a little bit of humor here. I had some friends tell me, they said, Sybil, you don't smile enough. And here I am right in the middle of talking about the Lord of Karma and the Lord of Death coming together. I just thought, well, I don't know how much I can smile, but I'm trying. But there is a lot of good stuff too. It's just a hard time. But there is a lot of good stuff coming. Anyway, yes, so let's get back to this. All right, so Pluto is bringing that to the surface, and as it is, it's falling apart. Pluto is also breakdown. It is decay. So those structures are in decay right now, and they are that what is decaying is coming to the surface so that we can have a rebirth and create something new and something different. Now, I do want to say they do come together, like I said, 3 times a century. It has it, and the teachings that come with it is responsible use of power and resources and its shadow. And it seems like we've been getting stuck in the shadow and not moving through. But I think this time, I have a lot of hope that this time will be different. Because I want to give you just a little history of what has happened in the past when Pluto and Saturn have come together. Because these the teachings around responsible use of power and resources and its shadow is geopolitical in nature, okay? And Capricorn, like I talked about, is our institutions, and so our political institutions. Okay, so in 1914, the Pluto-Capricorn conjunction was in Cancer, just the opposite of Capricorn. And Cancer brings up clannishness. Let's just say the shadow, because that's what's really, coming up is, the shadow of Cancer is xenophobia, put it that way. And there was in 1914, World War I started, and there was no questioning of the war. There was a patriotism, to support the war. And in 1931, there was an opposition between Saturn and Pluto, and that was during the time of the Great Depression. In 1947, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was in Leo, and we had the Cold War, the UN Charter for Creation of Israel, the partition of India and Pakistan, but also many inventions. After the Second World War, there'd been a lot of technology developed in the military that was then passed on to the public, and we made a lot of advances then. And just so you know too, there's a lot of people born with this particular conjunction that we know, and often people who have Pluto-Saturn conjunctions, they have come in to really learn that responsible use of power and resources. The other thing is about the transformation of consensus reality. Many people that were born with this particular conjunction are playing a big role in helping to transform our consensus reality, what we know to believe is true. And by consensus reality, just an example of they say that when the settlers first came to the New World, Americas, the people living here didn't see the ships because it was not part of their reality. And so just so you know, reality is not what we think it is. It's what we agree that it is. And these are times of great change when we can change. What we agree upon is reality, and what is okay and what is not. All right, just one more of the past, and that is in 1982, there was the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto in Libra, and we had the AIDS epidemic then. And that certainly transformed our consensus reality about who we can love. I mean, it was a horrible thing. I'm not saying in any way that there was, it was a horrible thing. But many people lost loved ones. And it really brought people up and out, and started a discussion about, who we can love. And of course, the opposition of Saturn and Pluto in 2001 happened almost exactly at the time of the 9/11, the Twin Towers. It happened on September 11th, and it was on our ascendant-descendant line. Now, one more thing is the last time Pluto and Saturn were in Capricorn was 1518. Now, it's been in these other signs, but it hasn't come around to be in Capricorn again for almost 500 years. And what happened 500 years ago? Well, of course, the colonization of the Americas was the real, and the Protestant Reformation. They were both happening, both changing. Certainly, the Protestant Reformation was a transformation in consensus reality, changing what people had always believed. But the colonialism, that was certainly the shadow side of responsible use of power and resources. This was just all about power and domination, and the use of resources and using people. Anyway, we know that. Anyway, in 1518, the plans to invade Mexico by Cortez were in the works. He didn't actually go until 1519, but he was planning to do this the prior year, and that's what happened. And it started the colonization of the Americas with I mean, they had come in 1493, so this was kind of all in the same time period, or 1492, and there was the papal bull of the doctrine of discovery, is what they called it, in the same time frame. And so at the same time, um, Pluto and Saturn are also conjunct their own south nodes. All planets have nodes, not only the moon. And they are energy points that travel around the moon, and just, I'm going to go into deeply into it. But it is the end of a karmic cycle. And so our relationship with our First Nations people in the Americas, it is time for a major healing, and also slavery. People, they didn't come to the Americas until later, but slavery actually started on the west coast of Africa around 1450 with the Europeans. So it's kind of all in the same time frame. But anyway, so, and as the way to heal anything is to first acknowledge there's a problem, apologize, make amends, and ask for forgiveness. And this is where we are. And this is a cycle that really needs to be healed, I feel, for our lands to move forward. And I think it's in the process. And we need the wisdom of our indigenous peoples, the First Nations people of this land. Okay, all right. And for ourselves, ultimately, it is ultimately about standing in our own power and personal authority. We are reaping what we have sown now, and so there are amends to be made. And it is about standing in that integrity and realizing that this is part of what needs to be done. Climate change is here. Mother Earth is speaking out, speaking very strongly. A Capricorn is an earth sign, and she works very closely with the earth. And so it is about making things right. Capricorn, that's what it's about. And Saturn, is the Lord of karma. It's about making things right. How do we make things right so that we can move forward? Okay. And also, even just in in the situation that the United States and actually the world is in, and this potential for war, there is that potential to transform our consensus reality around war. I do not believe that Congress is going to give this president a blank check to go to the Middle East like George Bush got, or like anybody else has gotten, because we now know too much. And that is part of Capricorn, is being wise, is paying attention, being informed, being well informed, being discriminating. It's like democracy is not a spectator sport. We all have to participate, and we all have a responsibility to do that. And that's what Capricorn is about. It's about our responsibilities. Like Plato said, if you do not take an interest in the affairs of your government, then you are doomed to live under the rule of fools. And I believe it is time for uprising. The people we are ready. The astrology supports that. I haven't finished as I keep going. It's just such a big year. And people are rising up all over the world, as well as authoritarian rule rising up all over the world. And it is, I believe this is what I would call it a crunch year, going through the eye of the needle. We have hard work to do, but we get to the other side, and we do it. Okay. But yes, so, and how does this impact us personally? Okay, as well as, I know what I wanted to say, just one more thing, and that is about the Iraqi parliament, basically giving the United States their marching orders, wanting them out of there. Now, how that will happen, I absolutely believe that it will happen. I believe that it is the Iraqi people standing in their personal power. Even though I know there's instability in the area, I don't know what will happen, but I know the United States needs to get out of there. That's it. And, people are leaving. Oil companies are leaving, getting their employees out of there. They're getting, it's not pretty over there. But the Iraqis have, and so we can do that too. Okay. I believe that it is time for the people to take a stand. Okay. All right. So that's politically. Personally, it is about healing trauma. It is about healing the trauma from this patriarchal paradigm that has come down the line through our ancestral line, through our families of origin, that whole line. It's time to heal it now. And so I talked about there is the process for healing is acknowledging there's a problem, saying I'm sorry, making amends, asking for forgiveness. And there's also lots of trauma, PTSD, that just really needs to be healed. And it's recognizing that we are not responsible for our trauma, but we are responsible for healing it. That is kind of our deal to come to Mother Earth. It is to grow, or for our souls to grow, to have this strength. And so that is our responsibility to do that for ourselves, and to know that as we heal ourselves, we heal 7 generations before us and 7 generations after us. It is an energetic healing, and it goes down the line that you can pave the way for your grandchildren, to not have these problems. And you can go back and heal your parents and your grandparents and that whole line just by doing your own healing. And that, for some people, is the mountain to climb and the biggest work to be done, because really, just to remember, it is the inner world that creates the outer world. Okay? And the more healed we are internally, the better world we create and walk in. Okay? The personal is political. Redefining boundaries, okay, where we say no, where we say yes. But it's also a time of great manifestation, as I talked about earlier. There is the inner work and the outer work. We are building the platforms for the new reality to come in. We are doing that, and it is here. And when we can identify what our role is, when we can see the big picture and know what it is we need to be doing, it will all come together. And that brings us into Jupiter. Jupiter is also in Capricorn. And Jupiter is the great benefic and brings in possibility, brings in faith, brings in belief and self-confidence, believe in ourselves and self-confidence, and opportunity and good fortune. So this Jupiter in Capricorn, it's a time to ask the big picture practical questions. See the big picture and look for the practical solutions. And as we do, the doors will open. And to believe that the only thing that is impossible in this world is what we believe is impossible. And that's really the truth. Now, I'm not saying probable. Probable and possible are not the same word. But always have that door open for possibility, that everything that you in your and your higher good, your authentic self want for you in this world will manifest. Okay. It reminds us to have faith in ourselves and believe in ourselves. I believe that, as Rick Tarnas, and I've spoken of him frequently, he's an astrologer who also is a professor at CIIS, and he's done some really good work. Anyway, he says that not only are we going through the eye of the needle now, but that the whole universe is here to support us as we make this shift. And so Jupiter is that. Jupiter is that faith. That is that knowing that we have this support, that we are making the shift, and to see the big picture, okay, and how we fit into that big picture, okay. Saturn, once again, I'm going to talk just a little bit about Saturn, because Saturn is moving into Aquarius in, let's see, March 21st to July 1st. It goes back, then goes retrograde, goes back into Capricorn, then goes back into Aquarius at the end of the year, where it conjuncts Jupiter. So Saturn in Aquarius is a little different than Saturn in Capricorn. Saturn is also the ancient ruler of Aquarius. And so in Aquarius, it's about redefining the boundaries for not what is, but what can be. It is really opening our boundaries, expanding our boundaries to the possibility that reality is what we make it, and that opening up to different perspectives, especially through the quantum mechanics, quantum physics, teaching us about the field and how to work with the field and how to rewire our brain, and all of these different ways of opening up to a bigger perception of reality, to a I don't want to say bigger. It is about thinking outside of consensus reality and making our consensus reality bigger and more inclusive and growing and expanding, right? Aquarius is related to Uranus, which is related to the divine mind. It's also about one's personal authority being in one's authentic self, about one's truth and authenticity. So it's like, Capricorn says, climb that mountain. Pluto says, make sure it's a mountain you want to climb, not someone else wants you to do. And Aquarius says, make that authentic. If, like for me, my goals are to grow my astrology business. It's not about, going back and spending more time at nursing, making more money there. I've been a nurse for a long time, but it is, who are you now? And to make that dream, the reality that you want to make, align with who you are. And Aquarius is always, and Uranus, the teachings always are about asking us, how much of our life have we spent trying to get the approval of others? Because Aquarius is just the opposite. It's learning to live without approval. And that's where your personal authority lies, is in that space, okay? And it is about thinking for oneself so that we can change our world. Mars is a catalyst that is very active this year. Mars is the warrior planet, is action, and it's like adding a cayenne pepper to anything that you cook. It makes it pop. Whatever makes things pop, that's Mars. Mars comes along and things pop. Mars is going to be popping, I'm going to tell you, in March, in April, in May, actually in June, and then in August, it moves into Aries, its own sign, where it's really popping. And it's going to be there for 6 months because it goes retrograde. And during this time, and this is the time of the election, leading up to the election and the election, Mars is popping, it's activating Saturn, Pluto. Well, first it's going to be activating Uranus. Oh no, first it's going to be activating Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter, then Uranus, then Neptune, then back to Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter. And it is, I'm just going to tell you, Mars in Aries is about conflict. It just is. And it is about standing your ground. And it feels, like, because there's a square happening, and squares are conflict. And it just feels like there is this, when it was an immovable object meets an immovable, a fantastic force, or whatever that thing is. I can't think of it. Anyway, it is two big bodies of energy that are clashing. And I'm not going to talk too much more about it, but it just seems like it is that battleground that I've always known is coming, is here, and is really important. So on one hand, we still are moving forward. It's like we can't start moving backwards, moving forward on our projects, building the new in the shell of the old, because the old is falling apart. The old is not giving up without a fight, just so you know. It's just not. And I see us moving through it, but just know it does, it's going to take, it's time for we the people to stand up, and claim what we want. Okay. The nodes of the moon are changing. They're moving from Cancer, Capricorn to Gemini, Sag, and also squaring the planet Neptune. That's going to happen in May, and going to be there through the end of the year. These are all signs of how we gather and share information and states of consciousness. And so it just feels to me like what is happening, and I'll go more deeply into it, when the time comes, but just to know the misinformation, the gaslighting, the telling us things that we know are not true, is just, no, you need to do your homework. everybody needs to do their homework to know what's true, what's not true, and to not fall for all of the lies and misinformation that they're already here, but just know that it's going to be even bigger. And so, Gemini is the sign of the heretic. Question everything, and especially question your beliefs. That's what I'm going to say, and that's really what's up. That's the real meaning of it, is questioning your beliefs, which you've always believed to be true, because truth is not so much that truth is changing as it is our awareness of what truth is changing. It's bigger. It's so much bigger than we have been able to know before, and a lot of information coming in too. All right, Uranus is in Taurus, and Uranus, they say expect the unexpected. It's like lightning bolts. It brings in change. It brings in change wherever we are stuck. It's related to the divine mind, and it's in Taurus, which is all about Mother Earth. So it is the consciousness of Mother Earth, and it is how she is communicating through us, through shaking us, through we're getting shook awake. And as we know, necessity can be the mother of invention. And so it's kind of like just being in a really fast pace with things moving a lot, and how do we respond? Okay, but Mother Earth's consciousness is just really changing, and not changing, but she's shifting into higher levels, and we're moving with her. And it just really seems to me like, one of the potential things that may not be on the agenda for 2020, but maybe 2021, is the return of some of these sacred sites to her indigenous caretakers who have taken care of her for so long, because we really need them there to be able to listen to her. And there's going to be a lot of surprises that are happening in 2020 and 2021. So it's like, don't be attached to the way things have been, because things are moving in a different direction, and things can have tremendously different outcomes. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction at the end of 2020. This is something that happens every 20 years. It is the zeitgeist. That these 20 years, the zeitgeist means the spirit of the age. And it has been in earth signs for the last 200 years. It is now moving into air signs, except for 1980, 81, when it was in Libra. But now it's moving into 200 years of air signs. And earth signs are very solid, very practical, very stable. Air signs are visionary, and they want to connect. And Aquarius is a very collaborative sign. It seems to me we are moving into a zeitgeist of collaboration, of more equality, and all of those new structures that you are working on building in this Capricorn time. Know that the vision is opening, the vision is getting bigger, and actually those things will start to manifest in 2021 when we step into this different zeitgeist. It is a more progressive time. It is Jupiter is a vision and expansion. Saturn is limitation and hard work. So it's how to bring that vision into reality. It's all there. And it is the time of the people. I mean, Aquarius really is the sign of the people. And to know that it is time for the people to make a stand for a different world. And it's happening everywhere. And Aquarius is the sign of revolution. When Saturn and Jupiter make this conjunction, Uranus will be square it. Uranus will actually be square a Mars-Saturn conjunction in April as well. That can definitely be a sign of an uprising for Mother Earth. Anyway, there are lots of surprises. We are moving into a new age. And the question is not, like I said, are we going? It's how smooth or difficult will this transition be? We are making some quantum leaps. And it's like, don't get distracted by all of the other difficulties that are happening. You know, keep working hard. Don't get distracted by things that are not important. That's what I want to say, because there's a lot of important things happening that need our time and attention. All right. Well, and I will continue to keep you updated bi-monthly with new moon and full moon videos, where I'll go deeper into detail in many of these things as they're happening. But it is a time of faith. It is a time of revolution. It is a time of hard work. All right. Wishing you all the best in 2020.